Welcome, my name is Alejandro Duto and this is another ISDC video. This video will be the continuation of the Operation Crossroads shipwrecks, and today we're going to be diving the iconic aircraft carrier USS Saratoga. In order to deliver a highly comprehensive dive guide on the wreck, we'll have the usual sections, further divided into some subsections and a little bit rearranged. That said, we'll have a dive brief for the outside dive. We're going to go for that dive, and then we'll come back and do several briefings and dives for the penetrations themselves. On this part of the video, we're going to be briefing you and checking out the main deck where the CAC and officers' quarters are. Then we're going to be going one deck below to the upper half deck to the scullery and mess hall. Then we'll have the middle half deck where we're going to be making our way into the dentistry room and sick bay, but we'll do that through the supply offices and junior officers' quarters. Then to finalize the penetration section, we will have two more dives. One on the second deck where we will visit the dive locker, and on the third deck where we will visit the marine shop. And then as usual, we're going to be finishing the video with a recap on the history of this wreck. For this particular video, we had some collaborators. First of all, Aaron Argrimson, who was the dive leader and is the owner of Dirty Dozen Expeditions. Also, we have some shots from Didier Folan-Grisel and pictures from both Elmar Dette and Dan Dawson. So sit tight, we're on for an epic underwater experience. Before we start, remember that we did a general briefing video with all the details needed to know about diving in Bikini Atoll. The link is on the description or in the card that is popping up right here in the corner right now. Now let's talk about diving this amazing wreck. The USS Saratoga was a Lexington-class aircraft carrier that measured, on its initial configuration, 888 foot long, that is 270 meters, by 106 foot in width, which is 32 meters, and could carry as many as 2,791 men and 78 planes on board. This is one of the only 3 aircraft carriers that can be dived across the world. The other 2 are the USS Oriskany in the Gulf of Mexico and the HMS Hermes in Vatikaloa, Sri Lanka. After being hit by 2 atomic bomb detonations, Able and Baker on Operation Crossroads, the USS Saratoga went down 3 miles from Bikini Island, sitting nowadays upright with the bow section in really good shape, in really good condition, all things considered. So, resting at 173 feet, that is 53 meters, in the Bikini Atoll Lagoon, and sitting upright, it presents with many possibilities for exploring. There's a lot of relief on the deck, and the island goes up all the way to approximately 70 feet or 21 meters in depth. Then the flight deck, a little bit deeper, is at 100 feet or 30 meters. Here are some highlights on the dive on the outside of the wreck. Let's start at the bottom level, at the sand level. This level, aside of the majestic views you will have from the bow of the ship and the overall silhouette of the Saratoga, you will find planes lying around that were blown off by the explosions. Some Helldivers and TBM Avengers, and even a Kingfisher. Also, all the pieces of debris around the wreck give a very eerie landscape, and which is very interesting to dive and to spend some time on it. Also, of course, the propellers, which are right now half buried in the sand. Now, it must be said that the stern section of the ship is decaying very quickly, and the shape of the ship is barely noticeable on some sections. Now, moving up a little bit to the flight deck, we can say that the flight deck is in pretty good shape from midship to the bow section, while it is almost collapsed from midsection to the stern. So on the flight deck, if we start diving from bow to stern, you will be able to see still somehow wooden structure is still there, which is very interesting. And when we arrive to the island, we can see the iconic twin 5-inch guns that will welcome us. On the deck, most of the interest resides on the starboard side, which is where the guns sat on top of the flight deck. If we move a little bit forward, we can find the wreckage of the stack, which is still there, and the big opening that the forward elevator shaft left. From this opening is where most of the penetrations will start. A level below, but almost at the same depth, there are a set of guns on both sides, port and starboard, which are worth visiting. These are single 5-inch guns, also in great shape. If we go past the island itself, we can check out the mounts where the Mark II 40mm were, while one of them is still there. Also, there's another twin 5-inch gun that is still in place, finishing kind of the whole superstructure. Finally, let's talk about the island, which is plenty of easy penetration possibilities and is usually full of life. The highlight of the island is the navigation bridge with a lot of artifacts on it. Okay, with all that said, let's now hit the water and take a look at it. Welcome back. Now let's start the exploration of the inner part of this aircraft carrier. We'll start from the upper decks and move one by one to the lower ones. Before getting deck by deck on the penetrations, let's have a look at how the elevator shaft looks like and where the holes and doors that we use are. Here you can see the entrance to each of the decks, to each of the penetrations we are going to be making. To put what we're going to do in perspective and understand what was covered, here's a section plan only showing the bow part of the ship with the specific rooms covered throughout the dives. We got to visit parts of the main deck at 33 meters or 109 feet, the upper half deck at 36 meters or 118 feet, the middle half deck at 39 meters or 128 feet, the second deck at 42 meters or 137 feet, and the third deck at 45 meters or 147 feet. As you can see, it can be said we only made a dent to all the available possibilities of penetration here. So the first section we visit is right below the flight deck, on the main deck, and is the CIC, or the Command Information Center. The Command Information Center is known as the ship's informational nerve center, and it serves as the home of the operating stations, charts, and circuits to other operations and communications throughout the ship. We enter through the flag office and move into the CIC. When that section is covered, we move towards the bow and into the Admiral's cabin, which the K have merged with the officer's barber shop. From there, we will move towards port and into the ready room and visit the captain's cabin. Okay, let's go check it out. So below CAC, on the upper half deck, is what we call the Scullery, where we visit the originally Ward's officer's pantry, mess hall, and country. Join me and let's take a look at it. Now moving to the middle half deck, one of the most iconic sections of the wreck, which is the main route to the dentist office, we enter through what it used to be an armory and supply offices. Then we'll find the junior officer's mess room, where a Mark V dive helmet resides. And moving towards the bow into the warrant officer's country, there's a ladder that will get us to the sick bay on the second deck. As we move down that ladder, it becomes noticeable that this part of the ship has no connection to the outside as the silt remains in suspension. When we get down, we turn 180 degrees towards the stern. After sick bay and a dispensary, we get to the end of the corridor, and there, at the left, is the dental office. Now, on this same level, the second deck, accessing through the forward elevator shaft, there's a dive locker, where the highlights are the two dive helmets located on the port side room, and also the CRO's pantry and mess rooms. Another highlight are the dry suits. The last piece of penetration we have to show is the marine workshop, which is located on the third deck, where the elevator made its lowest stop. It is a rather open space plan where the diver can see a lot of machinery, with a highlight on the electrical workshop section. Well, this is the extent we got to visit on this massive ship. Of course, there are a lot of places that still remain unexplored without accessibility or simply unknown. Okay, so let's talk about the history of the Saratoga. Saratoga was launched on April the 7th, 1925 from New York Shipbuilding Company in Camden, New Jersey. Early on, the USS Saratoga was commissioned on November 16, 1927, with Captain Harry Yarnell in command. The ship was originally built to be a battle cruiser, but later was authorized to be completed as an aircraft carrier. She sailed from Philadelphia on January 6, 1928 on shakedown, and on January 11, 5 days later, Saratoga's air officer, Mark Mitchell, landed the first aircraft on her flight deck. On January 27th, during an experiment, the rigid airship Los Angeles ZR-3 moored to Saratoga's stern and took on fuel and stores. Later, that same day, she sailed for the Pacific, where she joined the battle fleet at San Pedro in California. For the remainder of the decade and throughout the 30s, the Saratoga maintained readiness by participating in multiple fleet exercises in the Pacific, Atlantic, and the Mediterranean. Now let's fast forward to Saratoga's participation during Second World War. On December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Saratoga was just entering San Diego from an interim dry docking at Bremerton, Washington. The following day, she hurriedly was underway, carrying Marine aircraft intended to reinforce the vulnerable garrison on Wake Island. Saratoga reached Pearl Harbor on December 15th, only to refuel, and she then rendezvoused with the USS Tangier AV-8, which had relief troops and supplies on board, while the US Navy's aircraft carriers USS Lexington CV-2 and USS Enterprise CV-6 provided distance cover for the operation. However, the Saratoga force was delayed by the low speed of its oiler and the necessity to refuel destroyers. After receiving reports of Japanese carrier aircraft over Wake Island and enemy landings on the island, the relief force was cancelled on December 22nd. Wake fell into the hands of the Japanese 1 day later. Saratoga continued to operate in the region of the Hawaiian Islands for the remainder of 1941. On January 11, 1942, while heading towards a rendezvous with Enterprise, 500 miles southwest of Oahu, Saratoga was hit by a deep-running torpedo fired by the Japanese submarine I-16. During this event, 6 crew members were killed and 3 fire rooms were flooded, but Saratoga still managed to reach Oahu under her own power. After repairs were completed, the ship made a way to Bremerton Navy Yard for permanent repairs and the installation of a modern anti-aircraft battery. On May 22nd, Saratoga made way to San Diego, where the ship's air group conducted intensive training. While there, intelligence was received of an impending Japanese assault on Midway, but due to the need to load airplanes, stores, and to collect escorts, the carrier was unable to sail until June the 1st, and then arrived at Pearl Harbor on June 6th after the Battle of Midway had ended. So, on June 4th, it departed to Midway to ferry aircraft and goods back and forth, and that mission concluded on June 19th. As the flagship of Rear Admiral Frank J. Fletcher, Saratoga opened the Guadalcanal assault on August the 7th, providing air cover for the landings for the next 2 days. Saratoga continued to operate east of the Solomons, protecting the sea lanes to the beachhead while awaiting for an imminent Japanese naval counterattack. On August 24th, the first contact of enemy carriers was received. 2 hours later, Saratoga launched an attack and sent the Japanese carrier Ryujo to a watery grave. Due to cloud cover, Saratoga was able to escape detection by Japanese aircraft who had concentrated their attack on Enterprise. The American force weakened the enemy air strength so severely that the Japanese recalled their transports before they reached Guadalcanal. After landing her returning aircraft, Saratoga refueled and resumed patrols east of the Solomons. After a week into the patrols, a nearby destroyer reported to Saratoga that a torpedo wake was headed their way. The ship was unable to maneuver away from the torpedo quickly enough, and minutes later, the torpedo slammed into Saratoga. That attack killed no one on board and only flooded one fire room. However, the strike caused short circuits, which damaged the Saratoga turboelectric propulsion system and left her dead in the water. USS Minneapolis CA-36 took her under tow while Saratoga's aircraft made their way to shore bases. After repairs were made at Tongatabu, Saratoga arrived at Pearl Harbor on September 21st for extended upkeeps. Then, by the end of 1942, Saratoga set sail from Pearl Harbor on November the 10th via Fiji to Nuomea, which she reached in December the 5th. She operated in that vicinity for about a year, providing air cover for some minor Allied operations while protecting American forces in the Eastern Solomons. Later on November 1st, 1943, while troops stormed ashore on Bougainville, Saratoga's aircraft neutralized nearby Japanese airfields on Buka. By November the 5th, in response to reports of Japanese concentrating in Rubao to counterattack the Allied landing forces, Saratoga conducted one of her most brilliant strikes of the war. Saratoga aircraft penetrated the heavily defended port and damaged most of the Japanese cruisers, ending the surface threat on Bougainville. About a week later, Saratoga and USS Princeton CV-23 were designated as the relief carrier group for the offensive in the Gilberts, and later participated on the strike on Nauru on November 19th. At this time, Saratoga had operated for more than a year without repairs, so it was detached from the group on November 30th to return to the United States, where she underwent overhaul in San Francisco. So 1944 arrived, and on January 7th, Saratoga arrived again at Pearl Harbor and joined the USS Langley, CVL-27, and USS Princeton to support the drive into the Marshall Islands. From January 19th to 31st, Saratoga's aircraft struck Woodji and Taroa, and then Engebi, which is the main island in Eniwetok. During the month of February, Saratoga aircraft continued to cripple the Japanese defense by providing close air support over that operation. After the assault was complete, Saratoga took an extended leave of the main theaters in the Pacific to provide support to the British and to the French navies. During this time, Saratoga shared missions with the HMS Illustrious from the UK and the Richelieu from France. Later on June 10th, Saratoga arrived back at Bremerton for repairs that lasted throughout the summer. By September 24th, USS Saratoga arrived at Pearl Harbor yet again and began her second special assignment, training night fighter squadrons, which was its mission for the remainder of that year. On January 29, 1945, she was rushed out of Pearl Harbor to join the fleet at Iwo Jima, where she arrived on February 8th. The carrier was directed to carry out diversionary strikes on the Japanese home islands on the nights of February 16th and 17th. On February 21st, Saratoga was detached with an escort of 3 destroyers to join the amphibious forces and carry out night patrols over Iwo Jima and the nearby Chichijima. However, as Saratoga approached the area of operations, 6 Japanese aircraft attacked, scoring 5 hits to the carrier in just 3 minutes. Saratoga's flight deck forward was wrecked. Her starboard side was hauled twice, and large fires started at her hangar deck. By that evening, the fires were under control and the ship was able to recover the aircraft. However, Saratoga was ordered to Eniwetok and subsequently back to Bremerton for repairs. As a result of that attack, 123 men lost their life. Given Saratoga's age and the number of more modern carriers in the force, after the repairs were complete, Saratoga resumed training pilots at Pearl Harbor until the Japanese surrendered, ending the World War II. The ship was then assigned to Operation Magic Carpet, where she brought home more than 29,000 Pacific War veterans, more than any other ship in the force. At that time, Saratoga also held the record for greatest number of aircraft landing on a carrier, with a lifetime total of 98,549 landings in 17 years. After the war, Saratoga was considered surplus and was assigned to Operation Crossroads at Bikini Atoll to test the effects of atomic bombs on naval vessels, as we know. Saratoga survived the first blast, which was able, but was mortally damaged after the second blast, Baker, which finally sunk this great ship. Saratoga was struck from the Navy list on August 15, 1946. Okay, this brings the Saratoga video to an end. I hope you really like it. I did enjoy diving this aircraft carrier. It is definitely one of my favorites right now. Please leave us comments. Let us know what you thought about the video. Give us a like if you like the video. And if you're not subscribed yet, remember to subscribe. Thank you very much for being there and see you on the Nagato.